Alright, doing a quick build overview of my league starter for the 3.3 Incursion League, which is a Lightning Trap Saboteur. So you can see I've got the tree open here. This is my first of two Endgame setups, this one being a Mind Over Matter setup. This would be the earlier kind of spec, since Mind Over Matter has always been a good option for casters to get some early defense and a bigger life pool. So really quickly, I'll just go over the tree. We've got a lot of trap damage, life, obviously, and then spell crit. And the only thing really in addition to all that is piercing shots for the extra pierce for our lightning trap, so we don't have to use the gem. Acrobatics and phase acrobatics for some defense. And then, like I had mentioned, we have Mind Over Matter and a couple mana nodes as well. But all in all, pretty straightforward. There's actually a crazy amount of points available to pick from as a trapper now, and it's like it was hard just to find which ones look the best. This is currently a level 94 tree with +2 passive points. I think initially I'll be helping Alira for my bandits, but then later on, probably around level 90, switch off of that to get 2 passives just because it's so starved for points. And the big pull of Alira is the crit multi, but I already have a crazy amount right now with almost nothing from my gear. But for other passives to consider, if you feel like you don't need something here, if you want to try this on your own, Expeditious Munitions is available for a little bit of throwing speed and trigger AoE, though I don't think that trigger AoE is very needed due to getting chain reaction. Crackling speed is a big damage cluster, and then also if you can find a way to weave it in, get to either Purity of Flesh or Devotion for some extra HP, things like that. But for the Ascendancy tree, you can see over here, like I just mentioned, chain reaction, pretty much gonna have it if you're a Sab, not really any reason not to. Unless if you were possibly some sort of AoE build and you stacked all this trigger AoE, then maybe you could drop it and grab Explosive Impact or Explosives Expert. But then also Pyromaniac and Born in the Shadows. And actually, the order that I plan to take these nodes in is Born in the Shadows first for the massive defensive boost. I don't think it's going to hurt me too much delaying chain reaction from Cruel to Merciless Labs, since there usually isn't that much of a difference between when you do those two, so I would grab this one first, then Perfect Crime, then Chain Reaction, and Pyromaniac from the Uber Labyrinth. And then for the stats of the build, you can see over here, it's pretty good total life pool. Right now, level 95 character, 5,300 life, just shy of 2k mana, so you're over 7,000 effective life pool, plus the phase acrobatics, plus the blind. You should be pretty good at taking a hit. The only issue that you'll see come up in a minute here for the build, I think, is going to really be mana sustain. Not so much mana sustain from throwing the traps. I can easily deal with any sort of mana costs from spamming away at the traps by either bringing in Vol Clarity or just using a mana potion like I have here. This mana potion is probably going to be almost mandatory, though I'm not a huge fan of having to use one, just to have a way to get mana back when I get hit. But for the rest of the gear, it's pretty straightforward. The priority type stuff, you need an Essence Worm to get the Wrath Gem, Lore Weave just because it's really strong. Before this, I'll probably be wearing like a Tabula, maybe a 5 or a 6 link rare if we find one randomly. And then I've got a Bright Beacon for the weapon. Doesn't mean I have to wear it. I'll probably wear one, but if I find like a really good rare that just has high attack speed and crazy damage, probably swap for that. Then the rest of the items are mostly just life, mana, resists, and some spell crit on the shield. The only special item in here really is the gloves, which have currently all it says right there is the supported by level 20 trap. That's actually missing the mod on Path of Building. What it should say additionally is that skills which throw a trap will throw an extra trap, so it makes you, with your cluster trap setup, you throw 5 instead of 4 on the lightning trap. It's just a nice boost to damage and clear. And then everything else is pretty straightforward. I tossed in a Watcher's Eye This doesn't need to be here, but you probably want to shoot for one. It currently has damage penetration with Wrath. Alternatively, you could use the crit chance affected by Wrath, which again doesn't show up on Path of Building. They really haven't been that great about updating a lot of this stuff. Or if you can get your hands on one, the damage taken gained as mana while affected by Clarity, and then you would just add Clarity to the build. Because if we go over to the skills, I actually don't have Clarity at all right now. I don't think it's really good for MOM builds usually, unless you have a Watcher's Eye Jewel that requires you to run it. But for the Lightning Trap, you can see the links right here: Control Destruction, Crit Strikes, Lightning Pen, Cluster Trap, Trap and Mind Damage. I was hoping I would be able to use the new trap support, the Charge Traps, which gives you bonuses based off your power and frenzy charges. But after seeing the gem details, it doesn't scale that well, so not going to bother with it. It's only really good if you either have a whole bunch of the charges already, or you need the gem to generate your charges, which we don't need here because I have both Blast Cascade for power charges and Master Sapper for frenzy charges. But aside from that, Wrath inside the Essence Worm. I have what says Conversion Trap in my gloves. This will actually be most likely Lightning Spire Trap. Conversion is just acting as a placeholder since it's not available to put in here yet. But this will be a Lightning Spire for extra single target boost. Shield Charge setup, a Bear Trap setup in the offhand. And again, this one, I don't think I'm actually going to use Bear Trap. I think a lot of people will, but I actually want to try the Siphoning Trap. It gives a pretty good boost to both life sustain and, more importantly, mana sustain. I think that one's going to overall be better for this setup. But you could do Bear Trap if you want to. I don't think it's going to matter too much which one you pick. It'll mostly be a preference type thing. And then in the cast damage taken, you see Immortal Call, Duration, and the Vol Clarity that I mentioned before, if I decide it needs to be run. If not, this will probably just be like an Enfeeble to go off defensively. And in my last slot, it's mostly just utility stuff. Clarity, if I end up needing it, Decoy Totem, Lightning Golem, and a self-cast Enfeeble or whatever curse you would like to self-cast against bosses. I think that pretty much covers the MOM setup. I will have links to this and the other POB profile that I cover in the description if you want to look over it in more detail. But before I swap to the next one, which is a low-life version of the build that I will hopefully be switching to later with a bigger investment, I'll really quickly do a example of what my tree will look like while leveling for anybody who wants to see that, needs an idea for their leveling tree. So obviously you're going to start off with your trap damage nodes. Probably grab next Elemental Focus over to Cold-Hearted Calculation, and then grab Saboteur. From there, you either grab Blood Siphon or you grab Expeditious Munitions. Doesn't really matter what order. And what I'm thinking about doing, what I'll probably do from here is, instead of coming down this side first for Clever Construction and all these extra damage type nodes, I'm actually going to grab Written in Blood, but then go straight left towards Witch, through Witch, just to get to an early MOM. And right now this shows it shows 37 passive points spent, which will probably be, low 30s level-wise. And that puts it in a pretty good place defensively, and from there I can grab whatever other damage I want. Maybe I'll grab Crackling Speed. I'm not really sure. Otherwise, after that, it would be going up here, down this way, and getting Clever Construction, High Explosives, and maybe Devastating Devices. Probably not right away. Looking at it, we don't really need a crit yet. So probably go down here, grab Piercing Shots first, grab these life nodes, and then that puts you at a pretty well-rounded leveling tree setup. You can then grab Nullification for defense, maybe get the nodes behind MOM, and push into Templar for 70 points. Roughly a high 50s, low 60s tree, depending on how many side quests you've done. And I think that pretty covers a solid leveling setup in the order that I will more or less be grabbing my nodes in, and then transitioning into that endgame tree you saw a couple minutes ago. So, now, the big boy setup, the endgame setup. This requires some specific things before I think it will be worth swapping off of the Mind Over Matter version. Namely, you need a Shavs, obviously, it's low life setup, you gotta have it. You need the presence of Chayula. You can see right here, if I take this off, I lose about 1200 energy shield. It's just so powerful for that, and it gives you your stun immunity. And then also, I put in a helmet with the Lightning Trap Pierce enchant, which isn't really necessary. You could just use the Pierce support gem, but you need some way to pierce other than the passive, since this tree doesn't go down past here. You don't want to be spending 5 points to get that when you could get something like the helmet enchantment. So for this tree, you'll see mostly the damage nodes are the same as before. Couple additions in pain attunement, obviously, a little bit of spell damage down here, and this crit cluster for arcane potency instead of getting some of the crit down this way. But aside from that, it's mostly just ES nodes. These hybrid life ES nodes especially are quite powerful, even these ones which I didn't grab but I could. Since you do have the presence of Chayula, it turns a little bit of your life into extra energy shield. But you also need to make sure to grab Zealot's Oath. This is kind of the whole reason. This is why you're switching to the low life, is because instead of, like in the Mind Over Matter version, that only had about 5.3k life. So the 20% life regen from Pyromaniac is only working against, 5.3k. It's not that impressive. This build setup now has 8500 ES with a lot of room to grow. The ES gear is decent, but nothing amazing. Like the helmet's only 230 ES. The shield's 285. You could do a little bit better. I don't think I put any other really T1 ES items anywhere. So it could go up to as high as 9k. And then you're still getting 20% of that thanks to Zealot's Oath. So it just turns the sustain way up through the roof. And also you may as well get the aura nodes while you're over here anyway. And so that pretty much covers the tree. The gear, like I just said, it's mostly just regular ES gear. I put on a Dreadbeak. I actually love this item for low life casters now. It's 100% increased damage, but it doesn't have a good implicit, like something like a Scepter might have, but that's okay. 100% damage is still pretty damn good. It's got a little bit of an attack speed roll. And then most importantly, it has you have Onslaught while on low life. So that's, for the purposes of this build, mostly 20% move speed, 20% attack speed, because we don't really have a way to get Onslaught. Even if I was to try to use, Abyss Jewels, those Onslaught on Kill Jewels are not going to work, since it is my traps killing the monsters and not me. So it just really helps for speed. It's almost as fast as a Brightbeak, just thanks to getting Onslaught versus not having Onslaught, with the added bonus of it has a really big damage roll. I really like this item, and it's not too hard to get by the time you would be switching to low life. Shield, again, it's just a spell crit shield, this time with some ES instead of some life, but it's still pretty low. Helmet, I kept very tame on the ES since I made it a enchanted item, so we'd have to be crafting this ourselves, and it's probably not going to be a Hubris Circle if you're getting one early. Maybe you'll luck out, but I wouldn't count on it. Might even be lower ES than this, really. We've got a Shavs, decently rolled. The gloves, again, you want to shoot for getting one with the trap support, although it's probably not super likely that you'll be able to get one with both the trap support and high ES early on. You'll have to pick one or the other. Either way, both options are good, higher ES or higher damage. Sintrek for the boots, as long as you can make your resists work out, they're just a really good option always for high ES plus high move speed. And they give a little bit of dex, which is nice. This has a really high dexterity requirement, but I didn't put any dexterity on any of these items, so you could fix that with just a couple dexterity rolls. The presence of Chayula, pretty much a mainstay for low life builds now. And then on rings, I've got just ES and resists. I put mana regeneration on this one. I don't know how necessary it's going to be since we aren't MOM anymore. We only have to worry about mana in terms of sustaining the trap cost. And I'm actually using Vol clarity for sure on this setup. So maybe you don't need any mana regen, but it might feel good to have. But you are going to need dexterity somewhere, so keep that in mind. Probably going to end up being at least one ring with a high dex roll, and then maybe even a passive node committed to it. Since this is only a level 94 tree and a level 95 character, you could grab this dexterity node for an easier time. Then for the belt, yes, life, res. I put life on this because you do want to get life rolls if you can find them. If you are looking at identical items, and one has a life roll and one doesn't, the life rolls are actually good because they turn into a tiny bit of energy shield. Flasks are mostly the same. The life flask has been swapped for a sulfur, and the mana flask has been swapped for a wise oak for some DPS. Jewels, identical, just trading out the life for ES rolls, and the Watcher's Eye is currently identical to the other one. Then onto the skills. The only thing that really changes from the skills, since we are low life running 4, I believe, different auras, or 5, instead of, one aura that was in a ring from the MOM version, we run out of gem space, so I've actually dropped the Lightning Spire trap entirely. However, the Lightning trap itself hits almost twice as hard in this setup, so it should more than make up for any DPS loss. So we've got Discipline, Wrath, Herald of Thunder on the mana. With, you can see, about 140 mana open. The Lightning Trap in this situation will cost roughly 60 mana. You can get 2 casts off even if you don't have your Vault Clarity on. And then Blood Magic, we've got Grace plus Clarity. I went with Grace because the evasion is going to work really well with the blind on hit that we still have to make sure we get hit even less. Same cast damage taken setup, same shield charge setup, same utility setup in the shield, except we dropped one of the extra supports for a decoy since we didn't have anywhere else to put it. And again, I think I will still be dropping this bear trap for a siphoning trap just to get the extra types of sustain over the slight damage increase. And last thing, the low life version, I'm back to helping Alira. We don't need the points as badly since the ES based tree is a lot more forgiving. There's a lot more point efficiency grabbing your defensive nodes. And that covers my build. That's what I'm starting with, doing some Lightning Trap. Gonna have a lot of fun. I'm really excited to be playing Lightning Trap as an endgame build for the first time since Perandus League, where I tried making one and failed miserably because my character had 0 defense whatsoever. Whereas this time we actually get a little bit of extra defense and just a massive trap quality of life overhaul. Should be a good time if you are interested in playing this build or something similar. Again, I'm going to put both of these Path of Building links in the description. And if you have any other questions, just go ahead and ask them in the comments. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability over pretty much the next day or so, because once the league starts, I'm going to have some limited time schedule-wise to be answering a ton of questions. Well, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for the Incursion launch. Goodbye.